right, today we are stowing brakes for base. If you feel like this video might be about you, well, it is. But it's not just you, trust me. We posted an article about stowing brakes for base back in 2019, and we've sent that out to quite a few people over the years. You know, when they write to us with photos like this. And, you know, as our culture and society further devolve into an idiocracy-esque hellscape of illiteracy and polarization, we here at Squirrel are practicing non-judgmental acceptance and providing you with a vertically cropped video summary of one particular packing step that we don't recommend skipping. Now, there are amazing new canopies from fantastic new brands hitting the market practically every day. But as far as we know so far, all base canopy brake stow techniques remain the same. So there's a good chance that this video is relevant to your gear. Carl, this is where you put some text on screen that says Squirrel cannot be held responsible for canopies you may have purchased via a YouTube link, nor can we guarantee that the packing advice applies to your gear. Cool.
Almost all base systems have the following ingredients.
There is a control line, a guide ring,
a set loop,
and a type of cat eye or brake setting on the control line, and of course, a toggle. Using these ingredients, you must configure your pack job for the type of jump that you are about to do. There is no base jump where it is unnecessary to stow your brakes. Even unpacked jumps are better with brake stow. And of course, there are two basic categories for stowing brakes: slider up and slider down, aka slider off. So, for slider up, use your shallow brake setting, the SBS. That's the one closest to the brake toggle. From the canopy down, everything should look like this. Pass the control line through the correct slider grommet. Next, the control line passes through the guide ring. Then, the toggle tip passes through the cat eye on the line below the guide ring. Then the toggle tip stows in the elastic keeper. Next, firmly press the toggle onto the Velcro and stow the excess brake line. Voila, that's slider up. For slider off or down, use your deep or deep brake setting, your DBS or your DDBS. These are the settings closer and closest to the parachute. If someone told you that you should use your shallow brake setting for slider off, they are wrong 99% of the time. We recommend that you Google search all about brake settings Squirrel. The first result will be an article that you should read. There are two common ways to stow your brakes for slider off: the LRM and the through ring set. So first, the LRM, or the line release modification. The LRM is the practice of routing your brake lines outside of the riser guide rings and slider grommets when jumping in a slider off or slider down configuration. As a quick aside, the LRM concept was conceived by Mark Hewitt in 1988. And funny story, when he thought of it on that fateful night back then, he and I and a few other bros were doing shots of Jaeger at a Denny's in downtown Dallas at like 3 a.m. on our way to jump the Bank of America Plaza Tower.
Wait, really?
No, dude, I was in fucking elementary school in 1988. Jesus, get out of here. Anyway, the LRM sequence begins with the control line outside the guide ring and outside of the slider grommets if the slider's not removed. So first,
pass the Spectra set loop
on the riser, through the cat eye on the brake line, then through the guide ring. Next, pass the toggle tip
through the set loop
and into the elastic keeper. Firmly press the toggle onto the Velcro and stow the excess brake line. For the through ring set, which is not the LRM, in this scenario, you leave the control line routed through the guide ring if the slider is not removed. Here, you can stow the brakes the same as when slider up, with the toggle tip through the cat eye below the guide ring and into the elastic keeper. Firmly press the toggle onto the Velcro, stow the excess in the spot provided, and voila. All right, so now that we've covered what an LRM is and what the through ring set is, what's that all about? I came to base through paragliding, so I was accustomed to the feel of having my brake lines through a pulley on the riser of the canopy that I was flying. I really hated the feeling of flying my canopy with liberated brake lines. I put the lines back in the guide rings and I've never looked back because I like that feeling better when I'm piloting my canopy. But you should consider the options here. The most popular technique in North America is to use the LRM with the control lines outside the guide rings and outside the slider grommets if the slider's down and not removed. In Australia and much of Europe, many jumpers leave the control lines inside the guide rings. The cost-benefit analysis here depends on the probability of two events. Number one, a line over malfunction, which can be cured by dropping a toggle if your control line is outside the guide ring. Get a line over, drop the toggle, all good. Scenario number two is accidentally dropping a toggle and suffering reduced control of your parachute. In case one, if you're jumping in an area where a safe landing can be executed using rear risers and dropping a toggle accidentally is not a huge deal, then it makes sense to route the control line outside of the guide rings because it gives you that extra protection. If you're jumping in an area where a dropped toggle could mean serious injury, because you need full control of your parachute to land safely, for example, practically every LZ on the continent of Australia, and you think the chances of dropping a toggle are greater than the chances of having a line over, and for me personally this is true, then routing the control lines through the rings, which prevents the loss of a toggle, is smart. The feel and handling characteristics of a parachute with control lines routed in or out of the guide rings is distinctly different, and you'll probably develop a preference after just a few jumps. In any case, we think you should always use a form of control line restriction and tail control, whether it's a standard tailgate, masking tape, tail restrictive packing, or a combination of those things. And if you're not using the LRM, it's not a bad idea to have releasable toggles and a hook knife. You know, for all those base jumps when we open high enough to use that stuff. Okay, well there you have it.